Week 12 of the fantasy football season, and here's quarterback start sits every matchup this week. First game of Thanksgiving afternoon, won Green Bay Packers at the Detroit Lions. So Jordan Love, the last two games, he's starting to play better football. He's getting guys like Jaden Reed involved. Christian Watson even found the end zone last week. Musgrave has looked decent. And Romeo Doubs, he's had a solid season, but this week here in a tougher matchup versus a decent Detroit Lion defense, I think it's going to be tough sledding a little bit for Jordan Love. His home road splits are definitely a big difference this year. And I know it's a short week where offense is probably going to be more dominant than the defenses. But anyway, going into this game, I got Jordan Love as a borderline option. Jared Goff, I'll give him the start in this one. Great weapons, Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Gibbs out of the backfield. Sam Laporta having a great rookie season. Jamison Williams caught a deep ball last week. Maybe he could start getting things going. And this week here versus a Green Bay defense that is middle of the pack, and it's a home game where I think there's going to be a lot of scoring to kick off the week. I got Goff as a start. Washington Commanders at the Dallas Cowboys. Sam Howell, he's had a solid season and come out of nowhere for fantasy football owners here, Sam Howell. But this week here, very tough matchup versus one of the best defenses, if not the best defense in all the NFL. So Howell last week, a lot of turnovers versus the New York Giants, but he did finish with 18 fantasy points. But this week here versus a tough defense that creates a lot of turnovers and havoc, especially at home, is his Cowboy team. 12 games in a row winning over there. He's a borderline option. Dak Prescott, he's turned the season around from week 6 on. I know last week it wasn't a huge number game for Prescott, for pretty much 20-plus fantasy points. Fantasy owners could pencil him in for weekly, and we saw this team just give up 3 touchdowns to Tommy DeVito. So I think Dak Prescott, he's going to go out there once again, have a solid game, and he's going to be a quarterback most likely cracking my top 5 in the rankings this week. And the last game on Thanksgiving, San Francisco 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. Brock Purdy, the last 2 weeks, he's wrote the ship for this 49er team, and him and Brandon Ayuk and Kittle, those guys just have a great rapport. Kittle, especially the last 2 weeks, he's going off, and Ayuk went for 5 for 156 and a touchdown. So this week in a division matchup, Thursday night ball game, I think Brock Purdy goes out there once again and has a good one versus a young Seattle secondary, and a secondary where plays are open to be made. So he's a start. And now to the Seahawks, Geno Smith, we saw him leave the game for a little bit versus the Rams in week 11. And this one, I don't know if he's going to be 100% and play. But anyway, Geno Smith, he really hasn't put up numbers this season. Last year was a great year for him, no doubt about it. Top 10 in fantasy points at the position last season. But this year, he hasn't even sniffed that production at all. He's a sit. And if he don't start, obviously, Drew Lock is the backup and would start. And he has no fantasy value, especially versus a defense like the 49ers. Miami Dolphins at the New York Jets. First Black Friday game ever, a 3 o'clock start. That's going to be interesting to see how that will go and see how the ratings will go for the NFL in general if they want to keep running these games. Anyways, Tua, he gets the start. Obviously, a tougher matchup versus one of the better defenses in the league, even though we saw Josh Allen and that Bills offense torch him last week. But right now, Black Friday game, it's in MetLife Stadium, and the Jets, if they want to keep their season alive, they're going to have to come out and play better. But Tua with weapons like obviously Tyreek Hill, most dangerous combo in the league in my opinion, and then Jalen Waddle, and you got Mostert having a good year out of the backfield, even versus a tougher defense. I have him as a start. Zach Wilson era finally over in New York. He was a disaster, one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. And now they turn to Tim Boyle, who I don't think is going to be any better. Just looking throughout his career, he's been a pick machine. And this week here versus a defense that's had reinforcements the last few weeks. Once again, Boyle is a sit in this game. Could be a blowout going in the Dolphins' favor. Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the Indianapolis Colts. So Baker Mayfield, he's been solid for the most part this season. I know last week was a tougher matchup versus one of the better Ds in the San Francisco 49ers, but this week he's a borderline option going to Indianapolis. Pretty much it's him and Mike Evans, and the other receivers have done minimum for this Tampa Bay Buc team. So like I said, a tougher matchup here for Baker Mayfield. This is a full slate as well, where all 32 teams are playing this week. So he's borderline. Gardner Minshew is a sit. I know Minshew's had some moments. I know he's throwing the football pretty well. And this Tampa Bay secondary just isn't that good. We saw Purdy carve him up last week, and we've seen over the last few weeks quarterbacks go out there and have good games. But like I said, with a full slate, there's no reason for Gardner Minshew to be in starting lineups. New England Patriots at the New York Giants. Mac Jones, the team's pretty much given up on him, but we don't know for sure going into the week if it's going to be Bailey Zapp or Mac Jones. So I just put both these guys in the video here, and they both sits for me. This Giant defense I know isn't all that great, but they have stepped up last week with a good ball game where they just made Sam Howell look like one of the worst quarterbacks in the league, even though he's not turning the football 6 times was that commanding team. So this week here with a bad offensive line, it doesn't matter if it's Apple Mac Jones. Like I said, I think this Giant team creates some havoc on defense and make some plays, and no one's going to produce. Whoever starts now to the Giants, Tommy DeVito, he looked good last week, and he actually looked like a quarterback that can move the football and get it down the field compared to a few weeks ago with that game versus the Jets where they were scared to have him throw the football. So DeVito at least could throw the football a little bit, could go out there and make some plays. But this week here in a matchup versus New England, where we know throughout Belichick's career, they just feast on young quarterbacks. I don't see DeVito doing much, and with the full slate as well, he's a sit. Pittsburgh Steelers, Cincinnati Bengals. Coming into the year, you thought this would be a huge matchup and an offensive explosion, but Kenny Pickett hasn't lived up to expectations. He's a sit once again. He's not getting any production out of anyone because he just can't move the football. When you got Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and Pat Freiermuth in your offense, and you fail to put up at least serviceable numbers weekly, that's just on the quarterback, in my opinion. So right now, I know this Bengal defense isn't all that great, but he's a sit. Jake Browning going to be the starter, possibly remainder of the season. Joe Burrow out, unfortunately, with the wrist injury. And he's a sit for me as well. Pittsburgh, we know, is a top 10 defense. They get to the quarterback, led by T.J. Watt. I know you still got great weapons. Jamar Chase, Higgins, who I expect back in this game. Tyler Boyd. But right now, versus a tough defense, and Browning, pretty much an unknown. How could you go in there with confidence in him and put him in the lineup? He's a sit. Panthers, Tennessee Titans, 2 rookie quarterbacks going at it, and 2 rookie quarterbacks who really haven't done much this season. Bryce Young, first pick overall in the NFL draft, and he's been a train wreck. I know it's not 100% all his fault. He don't have a great offensive line. He really don't have weapons on the offense besides Adam Thielen. And this week here versus a Titan defense that's been an up and down unit, I still wouldn't trust Young. He's a sit. Will Levis a sit for me as well. Levis, he started off great with that first game, starting the season of his career with 4 touchdowns. But ever since then, weeks 9 and week 10, he didn't throw a touchdown in those games. And then week 11, garbage time at the Jacksonville Jaguars, he had 2 touchdowns. But this week here versus the Panthers, who, believe it or not, give up the 7th least amount of fantasy points to quarterbacks this season, he's a sit. Jacksonville Jaguars at the Houston Texans. So right now, Trevor Lawrence had the best game of the season for him, 36 fantasy points. He was running the football well. Him and Calvin Ridley got on the same page, and that's what he needed, Calvin Ridley to break out for him to have that good game. I know it was an easy matchup, obviously, at the versus the Tennessee Titans, one of the worst defenses against the pass in the league, but Lawrence went out there. He had a good ball game. This week could be a potential shootout with the Jacksonville Jaguars going to Houston, and I have Lawrence as a start this week. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and put up those huge numbers, but definitely a quarterback that could be serviceable in the top 15. C.J. Stroud, it's been a great rookie season for him. Last week, uncharacteristic, though, versus a weak Arizona Cardinal defense, turning the football over 3 times. So right now, C.J. Stroud, him and Tank Dell are playing on a great level. Nico Collins having a good year, Dalton Schultz. And he's putting up numbers as Stroud. He just has to cut back on the interceptions. The last few weeks, he's getting too pass happy as C.J. Stroud, trying to squeeze in some tougher passes. So this week here versus Jacksonville, we know they pounce on making turnovers and making good plays. Stroud still, I think, goes out there and has another good game. And like I said, he's putting up good yards. He's putting up fantasy points. And if he just cuts back on the turnovers like he was the first 8-9 weeks of the season, he really could get to the next level in terms of fantasy football. So he's a start this week. Next matchup, New Orleans Saints at the Atlanta Falcons. Derek Carr still in concussion protocol. We don't know if he's going to play. And even if he does, he's a sit. Derek Carr, I know the yards have been decent this season, but he's not really finding the end zone. This team is a run-first team for the most part. And Kamara and even Taysom Hill getting a lot of goal line packages and plays as well. So Derek Carr, pretty much, yes, he's getting yards, but not really touchdowns, and not really a quarterback who's put up points this season. Jameis Winston, we know he's a gunslinger, and we know he pushes that football down the field, but also he's a big turnover guy as well. So if he does start in this game, Jameis Winston, I don't know if anyone will have confidence to put him out there in their starting lineups 100%. So he's a sit. Desmond Ridder, I just don't know why this Atlanta team keeps going back to this guy. He's not that good of a quarterback. The offense is pedestrian, and we've seen it enough this season where they've won a few games with Ridder, no doubt about it, but that was a lot of luck and the defense playing great football. So this week, Ridder, in a matchup versus the Saints where I think they're going to exploit them early and often. He's a sit. Los Angeles Rams at the Arizona Cardinals. Matthew Stafford is sit for me. We don't know if Cooper Kupp's going to play in this game. Low ankle sprain. And Matthew Stafford, the numbers really haven't been great. This team's been better running the football for the majority of the season than throwing it, especially with Kyren Williams coming back in this game most likely. So Stafford, even in a matchup versus one of the weaker Ds in the league. But like I said, with that full slate, you're not going to start him. Kyler Murray, you start. So far, it's been a mixed bag of results in the first two outings. In terms of fantasy points, Murray's always going to be there pretty much. He's a guy with 18-plus fantasy points weekly because he gets 4 or 5 points just rushing the football minimum. So this week here versus a middle-of-the-pack defense, and obviously a defense he's familiar with in the Los Angeles Rams, I think Murray, he's going to do enough to have a decent fantasy game and be a start this week. Cleveland Browns, Denver Broncos, pretty much straightforward. Dorian Thompson-Robinson not moving the football well. And this Brown team, if they're going to want to win games, we're going to see the blueprint like we saw last week, running the football a lot and relying on that solid defense where Robinson doesn't have to throw the football a whole lot and just manage it. So he's a sit versus a well-improved Denver defense. Russell Wilson is sit for me as well. Wilson's been playing great football, no doubt about it. Many people thought he was washed up, but Wilson's bounced back, and he's having a great season. But this week here in a tougher matchup versus the Cleveland Browns, I don't see Wilson putting up enough production to put up fantasy numbers. In terms of winning the game and beating the Browns, he does put up that production, possibly in a home game. Buffalo Bills at the Eagles, 2 stud quarterbacks. Obviously, top 2, top 3 guys weekly in fantasy football. And Josh Allen, he looked more comfortable, and the offense flowed better with new offensive coordinator over there. So this week here at a Philadelphia defense that pretty much shut down that Chief offense for most of the game, especially second half. The Chiefs didn't score as well. It's a little tougher matchup, but Josh Allen, he just finds ways to move the football. He finds ways to find the end zone no matter the opponent. And this week, I think he'll do that again in a potential shootout. Jalen Hurts, he's a start for me once again. I know it wasn't a great game for Hurts, but even in a bad performance, he finished the game with 19 fantasy points. So Jalen Hurts, we know, is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Can run the football. That tush push at the 1-yard line has been huge for him in terms of rushing and total touchdowns. And this week versus a Buffalo defense, that yes, they played a great game, but that was the Jets offense. I think Hurts could have a good ball game once again, and obviously finish in the top 2 or 3. Chiefs at the Raiders after coming off of losses. We know Patrick Mahomes throughout his career has come out the next week and put up a monster game, so I expect nothing less this week versus a weak-rated defense. And Mahomes, division game indoors, we know he's raining on Monday night versus Philadelphia, where it was a little tougher to grip the football. But this game, it wouldn't be surprising to me if Mahomes goes off for 40, 45 fantasy points. So he's a start. Aiden O'Connell, he's looked pretty decent so far in his rookie season. A guy with not much expectation coming in, but right now versus a Chief defense, that's one of the better defenses in the league. Only giving up 17 points per game. You can't start O'Connell in this one. Baltimore Ravens at Los Angeles Chargers, Sunday Night Football. Lamar Jackson having another great season. I know Mark Andrews out for the season, unfortunately, with the knee and the ankle injury. But Lamar, he always finds ways to put up fantasy points. We know he's the best rushing quarterback in fantasy football in the league. And this week here versus Charger defense that can't stop anyone. Jordan Love even carved them up for last game, 322 pass yards and 2 touchdowns. He's a start. Justin Herbert, what a season it's been for him. He's the classic gunslinger, and he's just a player that goes out there and puts up yards and puts up points for his team. So last week, even 73 rush yards we got out of Justin Herbert. This week, definitely a tougher matchup, but could be a mini shootout between these two teams. So Justin Herbert, obviously a start, and then the final game of the week, Monday Night Football, Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. So Justin Fields, he returned last week. He didn't throw the football well. He had 1 passing touchdown to DJ Moore, but he ran for over 100 yards with 104 rushing yards. So right now we know this Minnesota defense isn't all that great. We know Justin Fields is an athletic quarterback and he makes a lot of plays with his legs. And I just needed to see that he could go out there and put a good performance. So right now, since he looks like he's back and could put up fantasy points as Fields, he's a start, especially in a Monday night game, indoors as well. And Joshua Dobbs, a start is for me as well. Bears, one of the worst defenses in the league. Joshua Dobbs, one of the better running quarterbacks in the league as well. He's definitely up there, top 3 or 4 at the position running the football. And Dobbs, he's just finding ways to make plays and get things going with it. TJ Hawkinson, Jordan Addison in the lineup. Even Powell, he's made a few plays in last week's game. And Ty Chandler out of the backfield. So this offense is rounding into form. Justin Jefferson possibly could come back in this game. I'm not 100% he will, but anyway, Joshua Dobbs the last few weeks is putting up numbers in a quarterback that's startable each week. That's quarterbacks start sits every matchup for week 12 of the fantasy football season.